And what I learned was pretty frightening. Every one of those animals and every one of the people who died of natural causes died of a nutritional deficiency disease. A human being has the genetic capacity, the capability of living healthfully to be 120 to 140, and I'm going to prove that to you in a second.
This doctor who studied human longevity seems to think that we can live a lot longer than what we've been told, and he has the proof to back it up.
Grew up on a farm, a beef farm in Missouri, about 80 miles west of St. Louis. And like everybody else that raises livestock, we raise a lot of our own feed, corn and soybeans and hay. And we grind this up into a flour, and we'd add vitamins and minerals and trace minerals to this. We'd make pellets or cake out of it and feed those calves for about 6 to 9 months before we'd ship them off. And the thing that fascinated me as a teenager was the fact that we ate out of those very same fields. We had a garden at the end of the field where we grew peas and beans and squash and peppers and whatnot. We wanted to live to be 100 with no aches and pains, and we didn't do the same thing for ourselves that we did for those calves. And as a teenager, this was very fascinating for me. And I always used to ask my dad, I'd say, "Hey, Pops, how come we go to all that trouble for those calves? We grind up their feed, add vitamins and minerals and trace minerals, and feed them for 6 to 9 months, knock them in the head and eat them. And we, out of those very same fields, don't do that for ourselves." And of course, being a Missouri farmer, he'd give me a lot of Missouri farm wisdom. He'd say things like, "Shut up, boy." Don't ask complicated questions. So I was glad when I got rid of that farm exercise and went to the University of Missouri and got into ag school. My major was in animal husbandry and nutrition. My minor was in field crops and soils. As a veterinary student, what I learned was the reason we put vitamins and minerals and trace minerals into animal feeds is because we don't have insurance for them. We don't have Blue Cross, Blue Shield, major medical hospitalization. We don't have Medicare, Medicaid, or a Hillary to watch out for them. And as a result, if we were to use a human healthcare type of system for livestock, it'd be a real sticker shock for most people. Because of the veterinary care, the hamburger would cost $275 a pound, and boneless, skinless chicken breast would be $450 a pound. The National Institutes of Health had given him $7.5 million to study pollution in the mid-'60s. This is when we first recognized that there was pollution in our air and our water and our food, and nobody quite knew what that meant over a long period of time. I had to do autopsies of animals that died of natural causes in the big zoos around the United States, and I was to look for a species of animals that was ultra-sensitive to pollution. And we were going to use that species of animals much like the old coal miners used to use a canary. You know, they take the canary down the mine, and the canary would act as an early warning system if methane gas or carbon monoxide would leak out into the mine. We're going to take these animals and put them in little strategic spots all around the world and pay attention to them, and if they started dying, we knew we were in danger. Well, to make a long story short, after some 12 years working at the St. Louis Zoo and the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago, the Bronx Zoo in New York, the National Zoo in D.C., the L.A. Zoo, and many other big ones throughout the United States, I'd done some 17,500 autopsies in over 454 species of animals, plus 3,000 human beings who lived in close proximity to the zoos for a comparison. And what I learned was pretty frightening. Every one of those animals and every one of the people who died of natural causes died of a nutritional deficiency disease. And I couldn't get anybody excited about those findings because we had just put men on the moon. We had a high-tech Cold War going on with the Soviets, and so talking about nutritional deficiency diseases 35 years ago in America was pretty low on everybody's totem pole. But I knew it was important, so I got frustrated enough. I went back to school for 4 years up in Portland, Oregon, became a physician, and I practiced for 12 years in a general family practice. A human being has the genetic capacity, the capability of living healthfully to be 120 to 140, and I'm going to prove that to you in a second. When the World Health Organization kind of looked at the top 32 industrialized nations on Earth and said, how long do these people live? Who lives the longest? We ranked 17th in longevity. There's actually 16 other countries whose peoples who live longer than we did. These are industrialized nations now. Then we ranked 19th in healthfulness. That means there was 18 other countries whose peoples live longer than we do before they develop diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, osteoporosis, and so forth. We ranked 23rd in live births and first year survivability of our... Now, just very briefly, these cultures include the mountain tribes of Tibetans, and these people were made famous in 1933 at the death of a fellow by the name of Wu Li, and he was born in 1677. And if you're quick with numbers, you'll notice that he died at age 256, and when he was 106, the Chinese imperial government began publishing his birth dates and birthday parties every year for 150 years. When he died, his obituary was in every newspaper in the world because he'd been tracked for many, many years and everybody knew him. And a year after he died, a Pulitzer Prize-winning book was published for which his life was the inspiration for this book. It was called Lost Horizon. And many of you will recall that story in that book. It talked about the Valley of Shangri-La, where people could live to be over 200. Eastern Pakistan, the Hunzas are legendary for living healthily to be over 120. And then during the 1970s, Dannon yogurt made the Russian Georgians famous. Some of you remember that ad. Prior to this ad, nobody could spell yogurt in America, and afterwards, of course, everybody wanted it. This was where a 140-year-old guy from Russian Georgia wore all his medals, held up a big saber in one hand and had a cup of Dannon yogurt in the other hand, smiled a lot and waved it around. You're supposed to believe that it was the Dannon yogurt that made him live to be 140. It was a very impressive ad because he had his son standing next to him who was 120, and his grandson who was 100, and his great-grandson who was 80, and so forth. So it was a very believable ad. Then after the breakup of the Soviet Union a few years ago, we began learning about other cultures in that same mountain range, the Caucasus Mountains, the Azerbaijanis, Abkhazians, Turkestanis, and the Russians studied all of these people for some 70 years and literally wrote thousands of scientific papers on their physical exams and their diets and blood tests and hair analysis, trying to figure out what it was that made these people special, because they were different races, different religions, but they had the common denominator of health and longevity.